Do you wonder why, after 19 years of being scrapped, chants of up NEPA still rings out whenever power supply is restored in Nigeria? Now, these days, we hear the shouts surprisingly, even in the settlements. One would hardly expect to hear them. Funny, right? Yes, it is pertinent to ask if this is indicative of a much larger issue. Tonight, we will delve into the power sector, exploring the nexus between the rather intriguing, never-dying chants of up NEPA and subsisting challenges in the sector. Nnamdi Odipo tells us more.
The disappointing silence that trails public power outages can indeed be deafening. And when this happens, it usually takes just seconds to hear that resounding shout. The nostalgic chant that refuses to die even after 19 whole years. NEPA, the former National Electric Power Authority, was unbundled, privatized, transformed, transposed. Well, describe it however you want, but the point is, NEPA was supposedly done with many years ago and should have been gone and faded from people's memories in 2024. But guess what? Even the 5-6-year-olds of today are familiar with the two-word phrase. Children may generally be confused about many things, but not when they can resume watching cartoons on television shortly after public power supply is restored. So for them, it is a magic phrase to make the lights come on and stay on.
I'm so excited when NEPA bring light because I'm going to watch cartoon.
Our parents taught us that when NEPA bring lights, we should shout up NEPA so that the lights will stay.
And honestly, who can blame this child? With the power sector's track record, we need all the magic we can get. The daily average supply of electricity from the national grid is pegged at about 3,400 megawatts, and with increases in tariffs for some classes of customers, the question still subsists. How can we resolve the issue of availability, reliability, and affordability of electricity by businesses and homes? Truth is, up NEPA is not just a chant. It has come to represent more of a cry for help, a plea for reliable power supply, and a reminder that, well, in spite of recent gains in the power sector, we still have a long way to go.
I think they should explore other areas of providing electricity to the masses.
We are appealing to governments to address fluctuation in electricity supply.
Otherwise, our power sector, and that's the flip side, would literally remain in the dark ages. And that's a wrap, or should I say a blackout. In Abuja, Nnamdi Odipo, NTA News.
That's a good one, Nnamdi Odipo there. And let's get some more thoughts on this issue as we're being joined by the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer, Rural Electrification Agency, Abba, Abubakar Aliyu. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Would like to get your reaction to the poses raised in the report. You know, Joshua Ojito has another report that will back up what we're going to talk about.
Stored power generation capacity stands at 13,000 megawatts, while the transmission arm has the capacity to wheel 8,700 megawatts. However, over the decades, available power generated, transmitted and distributed continue to hover around 5,000 megawatts or less. This perhaps is grossly inadequate for a country of more than 200 million people. This raises questions of availability of electricity to power Africa's largest economy, and the conversation continues on the need to harness other sources of energy, such as renewable and off-grid mini solutions to bridge the gap and increase access to electricity in the country. Also, the affordability of electricity in Nigeria is still a subject of discourse among end users, even as federal government continues to subsidize the product and sustain interventions in the sector. Joshua Ojito, NTA News.
As Joshua Ojito attempting to break down the issue in that report. Now let's bring in my guest, Abba, Abubakar Aliyu. tell me, why do we often find ourselves in the throes of the argument that Nigeria's transition from a vertically integrated, publicly owned electricity network to a largely privately owned and bundled electricity network is simply not working? Now, unlike the UK and the UK's transition in the 80s and 90s, Nigeria appears to have only achieved structural transformation in the power sector, and is finding it increasingly difficult to sustain technical transformation since the unbundling of NEPA. What are your thoughts, and what has been done to change that perception?
Thank you very much. I think I will argue otherwise, as in one question that we did not ask ourselves is, what would have been the situation of the electricity sector in the country had it been the privatization has not taken place? We have not yet asked ourselves that question. Vertical integration of electricity sector is one of the best things that has happened, and we have seen that fact that privatizing the sector and bringing in, creating enabling environment for private sector to come into that sector is one of the things that crystallize investment and enhance efficiency in that aspect. And in the Nigerian context, from the time the sector was privatized to date, we have really recorded a number of key achievements. Of course, there are areas of improvement. However, if you look at the number of private sector investment that has come into being, for example, we it's through the privatization that the Azura power was able to come into the grid, which is one of the best generation assets the country has at the moment, a 450 megawatt. Not only that, it is also the privatization of the sector that crystallized the emergence of the renewable subsector of the electricity sector in the country, where, for example, the Rural Electrification Agency is playing, and we are working also in the aspect of bringing in private sector to put in their investment and build many mini grids. To date, we impacted over 7.8 million Nigerians. We have built over 150 mini grids, and at the same time also impacted in different sectors of the economy. We have built mini grids for universities that is going to provide for over 350,000 students. We have built mini grids for health centers, tertiary health centers and primary health centers. We are also intervening in the agricultural sector. This wouldn't have been possible without the privatization.
Yes, all well and good. Now, you've reeled out some achievements in the power sector. Now, how strongly do you believe that the current Electricity Act will create the biggest opportunity, like it's been told to Nigerians, to solve Nigeria's electricity problem, at least on a state-by-state basis? And is it far-reaching to make it really work?
Yeah, so the new Electricity Act is one of the best things also that has happened in the power sector in the country. It has created an opportunity to deepen the opportunities for that will provide the private sector to come into the sector. One thing that is clear is that the government alone cannot address the challenge within the sector. So what the government now is doing is creating an enabling environment for the private sector to come into the space. Now, the new Electricity Act has provided the state with an opportunity to now partner with the private sector in the aspect of generation, transmission, and distribution. And this is one of really, really important aspects that will get the private sector to come into it. So states can now develop their own regulation, create this enabling environment for the private sector to come into the space.
Indeed, and encourage entrepreneurship growth in the states and all that. Thank you so much, Director MD Rural Electrification Agency, Abba Abubakar Aliyu. Thank you so much for joining us.